Hello, we've saved you a seat. Welcome to Train Station 8, a place to gather with friends and talk about music for a while, particularly video game music. This is episode 19, which is not an exciting number in pretty much any way, but it's going to be an exciting episode anyway. This is going to be an episode about inspiration in video game music. And joining me to talk about that is my brother, Steven. Hi, Steven.
Hello. I'm the first name you think of when you hear the word inspiration. But I think 19 is a special number because I think that's how old I was when we started podcasting.
Oh, wow. So this is your 4th anniversary?
I guess.
I don't know.
If that's how math works.
Sure. I don't think it is. Also joining me is Raheem, a.k.a. Megaran, and he is a teacher rapper hero, according to his website, and does some video game remixing and music stuff of his own. Hello, Raheem.
Hello. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm awesome. Good
that
to
is
be here.
great. I mean, actually, that is awesome.
Yeah, that is both awesome and great. And I'm super excited to have you on the show, especially because I realize we narrowly missed inviting you in the middle of a tour, which probably would have been impossible or torturous.
Yeah, that would have been tough.
Because that has happened before. I've been really excited to invite someone, and they're like, well, your podcast sounds interesting, but I'm currently driving all over the country right now, so I'm a little booked.
My Wi-Fi is probably going to be horrible.
Yeah, yes, everywhere.
I don't want to do a podcast from 3G. Also joining us is fellow podcaster, game journalist, and member of Disembodied Voices, Zachary Walton. Hello, Zach.
You just had to put the game journalist on there, didn't you?
Yep, I did.
But yeah, I'm back again, and more or less because I was told that Mega Ran was going to be here, and I kind of freaked out. So.
Well, Zach is a returning fighter. He was last on the show for our Wind Waker podcast, which I think turned out really good. So yeah, no, if Zelda inspires you, Zachary, then we can continue the trend.
That's a good point. So speaking of inspiration, I'm inspired to start with question number 1 here.
Oh, geez. No, that's a bad segue.
I like it. Question number 1 is a pretty simple one. What have you been listening to?
Oh, man. Okay, so I've been driving for the past 2 weeks.
Oh.
I've been listening to so much. That's the best part about being on tour, is just being able to play new music and listen to other people's new music. And so I've been listening to actually my tour mates' music. So my friend Tim White performs under the name D&D Sluggers. And and he makes chiptune punk. It's like pop punk. It's just such good stuff. So I've been listening to his new album called Hot Banana. And
okay, I like it.
Oh my God.
You gotta check it out. I mean, it's stuff about video games. It's like about relationships. It's all created on 2 Nintendo DS's and a guitar. So you gotta check it out. It's such good stuff.
That sounds really cool.
That's Hot Banana. Do you find that like on Bandcamp, or where does he?
Yeah, it should be Bandcamp, iTunes, anywhere that fine music is purchased.
That's really, I feel like I hear people making music on Game Boys all day long, but you said DS?
Yes, on the core DS10 program.
Okay, that's really cool. That seems uncommon to me.
I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah. Neat. I will check that out.
Mm-hmm. It's some good
Looks
stuff.
like it was on Indiegogo, but...
Yes, it was. He did an Indiegogo for the album, and it worked out really well.
Awesome. Well, I respect his naming skills, so I'm curious to hear that.
Naming skills. Nice.
All right then. Is that mostly what you've been listening to, or anything else?
I guess also a friend turned me on to a group called Buke and Gase. Really awesome stuff. Buke and Gase is, I forget where the actual name came from. It's because of what the instruments they use. They use what the heck is it called? The Buke is like a 6-string ukulele.
Okay.
And it's some really fun stuff. Really interesting. And the Gase is a guitar which meets a bass. So it's these are combination instruments.
It does make sense. That name made no sense until you said that, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's the perfect.
Yeah.
It's some really good stuff. I really enjoy it. It's some great indie pop experimental stuff, and I've been listening to a lot of that on Spotify.
That's
so
cool.
That and Hot Banana have been making my last weeks.
Well, they have some pretty interesting SEO going because I type Buke into Google and they come up as like the 4th result. So
nice.
Apparently, not many other people are trying to use Buke for their internet.
Nice.
All right, that's awesome. Zachary.
Right. So, like last month, I'm not sure when last month, but like Infected Mushroom put out their last of their Friends on Mushrooms, things, and it's like, Volume 3 is really good stuff. Although, the conceit of the Friends on Mushrooms, EPs has been to, bring in some of their friends and, have them, do these collabs and stuff. But Volume 3 only has 1 collab and 3 tracks just by them. So, I don't really know, so I guess the third volume is actually more of a, friend on Mushroom. Not sort of friends, but it's still really good stuff. They're still, I guess, trying out new sounds. It's really, it's been a lot of fun following them the past, 8 years, and just seeing them grow from, more of a trance kind of group to where they are now, to where it's more like a trance infused with, punk and pop and, and it's been fun, and they were saying that they're actually trying to fund a movie. So
what?
What
is that going to be?
I have no idea, but they were talking about that they're going to start up a Kickstarter soon to where they want to raise $1.5 million to film a 3D movie of them on tour.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Wow. Okay,
so,
that's interesting.
So I guess we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I've heard one of their albums, which was the 2012 one, Army of Mushrooms.
Yes.
So I don't really know where that fits into their arc. How similar is that to everything else they've done and what they're doing now?
I think that that album I think fits in more closely to Legend of the Black Shawarma, which was I think 2010 or something.
Yeah.
And that was more, I guess, of they're more of trying to infuse vocals into their stuff, and I guess that was more of them being kind of more like a band at that point, to whereas in Friends on Mushrooms is definitely kind of going back to how they were to where it's just 2 guys just hammering out stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how many songs are on that?
4 songs. Actually, Volume 3 has 4 songs. Volume 2 has 6, and Volume 1 has 4, I think. So.
Cool.
I feel like I peek in to see what Infected Mushroom is doing maybe once a year, and I always enjoy it, but then never really, follow them or add it to my library or anything. So let's take a Zachary personal recommendation here. If I were to start with one album and just give it a good solid chance and listen all the way through, which one do you think I should start with?
Vicious Delicious, which is their 2007 album, I think, and that one is actually kind of what turned me on to liking them a lot. And it's, I guess, their most approachable album.
Approachable despite having ridiculously creepy cover art.
Yes.
Good job.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
All right, that's cool. Is that mostly what you've been listening to? Have you been listening to I don't know, your computer fans?
And I guess, and I actually got the Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack, so
that's awesome. Where did you get it? That is a great soundtrack.
I bought it. I actually bought it off of the Square store, but it won't be here for a while. So I went and just so I went and got it through less than scrupulous means until I actually get the real thing in.
It's always a dodgy question to say where do you get it, because you're always worried someone's going to say, places.
That one website. Well, I was so close to buying that soundtrack, even though I only played I don't know, 4 hours of the game or something. And my rationale for that with big RPGs or MMOs is always like, I don't want to buy the soundtrack until I experience the music for myself. But I'm never going to experience all of the music in a game that large. Yeah, so it's the same thing with Guild Wars. Guild Wars 2. I love that soundtrack. But I just never actually buy it because I say someday I'll make it out to every single continent and do every single raid or whatever.
We totally have time for that, yeah.
That's super. I should do
that.
I
haven't kept up with Final Fantasy music since, like, Final Fantasy 1. But,
okay.
I remember really enjoying what I've heard of 13's music, actually. I'd be interested to get that soundtrack. Because it had
That's an interesting soundtrack, too. Yeah. Oh, Matthew just put out...
I saw that. That's what made
me
think of it. Yes.
Yeah, a.k.a. Major Third. Two-time guest on this podcast. He's not two-timing, he's just on twice. And, yeah, he put out, like, a cover of Final Fantasy 13 with the Final Fantasy 6 inspired, like, instrument set. So basically it sounds like it's running off an SNES, and it's very cool.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. You know, that
very nice stuff.
What you just said here made me want to do a quick informal poll. Do you say SNES or do you say SNES?
I usually just go for the full SNES. I just never grew up saying SNES for some reason.
Zachary?
SNES.
SNES. And what about you, Raheem?
I was SNES, but I did have a couple friends who said SNES.
Exactly. I feel like I change every time I say it. But,
well, Brian, are you telling me you don't walk into a conversation and say, I played a really good game from the Super Nintendo Entertainment System?
No, I don't say
classic.
that, but I do say I played a great game for the GAMECUBE all the time. So
good. Or remember how Nintendo was always pushing for people to use GCN?
Oh, yeah, the GameCube
or the GameCube acronym. I don't know why they did that. They forced it everywhere. All the websites had to do GCN instead of just GC. I don't know. It was weird.
Steven?
Yes.
You listen to music, I hope.
I have. I've been listening to Prime Legacy from Carbohydro M.
Is that Metroid?
It is not Metroid, unfortunately. But it is a soundtrack to a classic space shooter that doesn't exist.
Oh, right. Yeah, he told us about that.
Yes, he did. He was on the last show. And it's a very, very good... It's you know...
But he was on the last show. He was 2 shows ago.
Oh, he was?
Yeah,
Oh, you're right. Or in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, he was telling us a bit about it on that episode. And it still uses his signature upbeat guitar sound.
Right.
But it also has a lot of chiptune-y stuff to back it up. Which almost sounds kind of generic.
Yeah, I was wondering.
But if you like his style, which is that uproariously fun to listen to, like never stops moving, happy sort of beat, it's all there, but it has a completely different tone to it. He's using different instruments and stuff. So I heartily enjoyed it. I listened to it like twice all the way through. That was good. I also got Alexander Brandon's Just Fun in the mail. I don't know if you guys are keeping track of that, but Alexander Brandon, who is, he did Jazz Jackrabbit. I think he even contributed to Dust, and Elysian Tale.
Oh, wow. Then he has my respect.
I mean, that was mostly Hyperduck, but I think he worked on that a little bit. But this was a Kickstarted album.
I remember that. I think we had someone plugging it, but I can't remember who now.
Was it Jason? Was it Jason Napolitano?
It might have been. I would have to look back. Someone was telling us about it. I believe
it was probably Jason Napolitano. He was probably doing PR for it.
Yeah.
If I was to guess. But it's kind of caught me off guard with how good it is, because apparently a lot of really talented people helped work on it. I was talking to Alexander a little bit on Twitter, and like Jillian Aversa did vocals for it, and
Zircon did some work on it.
Yeah, he did the same track. He did like the whole middle section. I think, since we have to say his name every episode, Jake Hoffman contributed.
Did Grant Kirkhope contribute?
I don't think so. Unfortunately, Grant Kirkhope was not involved. So yeah, my physical copy showed up in the mail about a week ago. the production is just stellar. Like, the whole style of it just jumps all over the place, but every single song has a really strong identity, and it's just, like, polished to a sheen. And I guess you could probably buy it on Bandcamp at this point. I don't know, because I backed it, but it really is worth looking into. It's kind of hard to, like, just give a simple rundown on what its theme is. Like, the cover art is, like, clearly Sonic inspired.
Well, I remember
like classic Sonic.
You were telling me about it, and you're like, it's almost like they made this just for fun. And you're like, as you said it, you realized that was the name of the album.
Yeah, so...
I mean, I guess aptly named?
Aptly named. Very fun to listen to.
Yeah.
So. What else, though? The rest has just been kind of in the background stuff. I've been trying to listen to Spotify since you keep recommending it.
It's great.
It is great. I just get frustrated.
Why?
Because I'll, like, pick an artist or whatnot, and then try to make a radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And they, like, keep looping the same songs that I've heard over and over again on other radios.
Yeah.
Every internet radio thing is...
I know, but just how am I supposed to discover new music when they play Death Cab for Cutie again?
What are you basing your song on?
I did one based on Snow Patrol, the whole band.
And that makes sense why they'd go with that.
Yeah, it does make sense, and I like the song. I'm not saying I don't like the song, but
typically what I'll do is, like, if there's an artist I like that pops up in the radio, I'll go into the artist and start listening to, like, an album from them that maybe isn't played very often. Like,
you're
right.
I
just a little more discovery than that. It's not going to be always stellar if you're just going in for the radio. That is not what I primarily use it to. The reason it's so much better than something like Pandora is that you can go into all of the artists' work and choose what you want to listen from them. So that's what makes it so good. And then build up a library and start, like, shuffling a favorited playlist and then buy the music that you discover on, like, iTunes or something. So.
And I kind of realized that. I can't just
jump in immediately
and have... I knew you were going to say that, but because you're logical and stuff. But
I agree, though.
I'm driving while I do it, so I don't want to fiddle with the iPhone a whole lot.
That's how you go with the whole, like, album. But I agree. I created, that punk playlist I've been doing. And it got to the point where it was, like, playing the same 7 songs on loop. It was ridiculous how much it had, like, narrowed it down to these few things. So that got a little frustrating, but
but it is an extremely well-made app.
Yeah.
It kind of has everything. So
I feel like Pandora has the shuffle thing down a lot better than any other of the apps I've
Interesting.
tried.
I haven't gone back to them in a long time.
I think the artist radio works a lot better. It's a lot more variety and it seems to know you pretty well. I mean, they have all types of algorithms in there that make for some good stuff popping up that is right usually up my alley. So I recommend their artist radio more than any of the other ones that I've seen.
Neat.
Okay, that's good to know. I used to use Pandora. I still felt like at some point I couldn't find a way out of the hole I had trapped myself in. They had me pigeonholed well, but I was stuck in that pigeonhole.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Spotify is a nice break from that.
Yeah.
It goes.
I thought something that's fun to create, like, a playlist after a song you would never think to do that on.
Yeah.
To see where it takes you.
Which is not what I did when I said let me listen to every Owl City song, because I just like listening to every Owl City song. I don't care what
Spotify
you say.
has you covered then, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Haven't actually checked.
Anyway, that's pretty much it for me. What have you been listening to, Brian?
I've been listening to a lot of Nights recently. Nights into Dreams, yeah.
That makes me so
I
happy.
love that music. That is some of my favorite video game music.
Oh,
it's like, it's just, he'll take this basic, like, he'll play on a certain scale, and then he'll just play with it for like 8 minutes.
Yeah,
and then solo a flute, and then solo like a little fake bagpipe, and then go into this other section where he has more of a rhythm going, and then just go off in another direction. He just has so much fun with this, with the one concept for a song, and he's able to do so many variations of it because of how the game worked.
Yes.
Because like the game, as you interacted with the world, it would subtly change the music. It basically let him write 8 minutes or 9 minutes of music for every level. And then they would interact with the game. So that was really cool. And weirdly enough, makes for amazing listening outside of the game.
Exactly, especially since it had to be all stringed together like that. You'd think it would be awkward and jarring and boring to listen to, but it's the opposite of that. Did you guys ever own a Saturn at some point?
No. Not a Saturn owner.
Yep.
Zach, I really can't...
You haven't owned a Saturn, have you?
I haven't actually owned, like, I'm pretty sure that I never actually owned, like, a console made by Sega, like, until I was, like, 22 when I got a Genesis.
Oh my
That's
God.
really interesting. Wow, yeah, we owned one before that at least, but there's no real reason to own a Saturn.
Not since Steven bought you Knights on Steam.
Yeah, not since I bought you. Now there's no reason.
And you really didn't like it.
Well, now I'm sad.
Oh, what the heck? That sounded like Knights.
It really did.
Yeah.
All right, Kapow.
I thought someone was like
anything else?
Knights up. Anyway, a couple other things. I've been listening to more of that punk music, but I've been kind of getting out of that, switching on to listening to some more Red Hot Chili Peppers. But I'm trying to think if there's... Oh, man, I feel there was something else I was listening to a lot of, and it's not coming to mind, so we'll go ahead and move on.
Good call.
Thank you. To question number 2, and this gets onto our main topic here. Is there a specific moment you recall music giving you inspiration? Specifically game music.
Absolutely.
So what would that moment be for you?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, gosh, there are so many, though. Back in the day, and it was DuckTales over NES.
Oh, yeah.
And the Moon theme of DuckTales was one that, when I first heard that tune, I instantly ran to my, I had this tape recorder. I remember it was this bright red tape recorder called the Kid Quarter. And and I set it right by the TV and hit the record button, or record and play at the same time.
Yeah.
And recorded on this cassette, and I just would sit in the corner of the stage and just let the music play and just record it for as long as I could, as long as it would, like maybe 2 or 3 loops of it. And then when that wasn't enough, I actually hooked up my NES to my VCR, and I would record like walkthroughs of the game, going through it.
Oh, yeah.
And, and that was, I guess I was doing Let's Play before anybody knew it. But,
that's fantastic.
But it was mainly just so I could hear the music over and over again, and be able to rewind and things like that, and to see and just to relive that experience over and over again. And so that totally got me into a creative mode where I started writing music that that I wanted to hear in a video game like DuckTales. So
you think it inspired you to write your own music?
I think so. I was already making music, but it definitely inspired me to make music that was more fun and just more broad, that I felt like could fit into video games. I was a huge video game addict, but at the same time, making hip hop, I just never felt like hip hop and video games could go together in a way
ridiculous. They could never work.
I never ever thought it could work out and not only be creative and fun, but to be good, So that's what I struggled with, and I felt like I fought it for a long time. And then eventually, years later, I'd come back and I would hear the Moon theme and say, oh man, I can compose a hip hop track around that, or something similar, or compose some lyrics to that, or to a similar melody or similar feeling. And so I definitely would think it was DuckTales that did a lot of inspiring for me creatively to get me kind of where I am.
It's interesting, and it's interesting now that hip hop and video games is kind of like this subculture around it. Like quite a few different people have tried that now. It wasn't a thing at all back then, but I think like it's gotten its own little following in the remix community.
Oh yeah.
So Zachary, what is a time video game music has inspired you?
Yeah, like, it's weird, like, this question was the one that, like, gave me the most trouble, because it's hard for me to, like, think of a time, because, like, because, like, unlike you guys, like, like, I actually, like, don't make music, like, at all. Like, I've tried playing music, back in the past, it failed for me miserably.
You hate Guitar Hero, even.
All times. And so, like, so I actually turned to writing, but I've but I do have I guess like a habit to where like I'll put on like a game soundtrack or something while I'm writing, and I have found a lot of the times that like when I actually have something playing, the tone and the direction that I'm going to take a piece in will like change halfway through based upon like what's playing.
Yeah,
and it's really weird, but like it does really cool. Like I mean, I think I remember like writing something about a year ago where I was listening to like the Final Fantasy IX soundtrack, and like the entire like theme of my whole piece just like it like shifted as soon as the battle theme started playing for like some strange reason. I have no idea why still, but I mean like I'm guessing it's because of the song might have it just triggered something in my head.
Oh man, it's because music is emotion essentially.
So do you remember what that piece was about, Zach?
Let's see here. I think it might have been something about like identity in games or something. And I think it started off as like, yeah, I think I like began it as, more or less just wanting to, I guess, like something very simple, something that I guess, something that, I mean, like, you might see on like, a dozen sites here and there. But then like that song, like somehow like it coerced me into being like more personal and like more like aggressive in terms of like what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that does make sense. And you got like 500 XP when you finished the article. Steven, you got a moment?
Yeah, I got a moment. Yes, I would say that a fairly recent encounter of this would be when I was taking a couple of dogs for a walk. I'm a pet sitter, so I do that a lot. And it was in one of the rare morning shifts that I took on. And I had been listening to Morrowind music all the way to the visit. And so I wasn't even listening to it anymore. I didn't have headphones on. It was just birds and dogs clicking their toenails on the cement. But I just kind of kept humming it in my head. And there's something about Morrowind music makes the world seem like Elder Scrolls. And so it doesn't just seem like a tree anymore. It doesn't just seem like a path. It seems like a tree that can hold many mystical adventures behind it, or a path that will never truly end.
Or a cliff racer right above you.
No cliff racers, not in my imagination. And there's something really special about that music, how it reminds you that life isn't all that different from Elder Scrolls. So that's kind of my moment.
Cool.
There are a lot more that are similar to that, but that's the one I remember.
And that was like pretty recent, right?
Oh, maybe 5 months ago.
Oh, that's not that recent. I thought it was recent.
Well, and it's not just like childhood or something.
Oh, yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I've been trying to rack my brain for a specific moment, and that's the difficulty with this question, is it's not at all, general. It is saying, what is one specific moment that music inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a tough question.
And I've been trying to come up with the right answer to that, because I'm sure there's a correct one out there somewhere.
Probably not, actually.
Dang it. I mean, I don't know if this is... I can't remember a lot about the specific moment, but I do remember driving and listening to music, which is something I do really often, pretty much anytime I'm driving, and I do a lot of driving. I was listening to Knight's music, which I want to do.
I already like this story.
And it's just... It makes me appreciate just the world more when I listen to that music. And I remember it as just... Say again, Steven?
I was just going to say that's a really sort of almost obvious but well put explanation of that.
Yeah, I guess so. And it made me happier to be a part of the world and inspired to make my life more like that music was.
Because you kind of realize, maybe you don't, but I kind of realized that when I'm listening to music like that, there's someone out there who is sitting at a desk or in a chair or what have you, creating that music. Mm-hmm. And then it was brought forth into the world, and now thousands and millions of people have been able to hear it for thousands and millions of hours.
Yeah, and when that happens, I'm inspired to do the same in the music I make.
Right.
And that happens when I'm listening to Nights. That often happens when I'm listening to anything Jun Seno does from Sonic games and fame. I just love that upbeat, creative, and so characteristic style that he has in everything he does. He didn't work on Nights, but
no,
Sega generally tends to have that sort of feeling for me across the board for what they do.
But okay, asking Raheem, who clearly makes more music than any of us by far, when you're listening to music, what makes you sit up and want to go do it yourself?
Other than DuckTales.
Other than DuckTales. Well, it's weird because when I am creating, I try not to think about music that I've listened to because I wind up creating it and copying it.
Yep.
So it's really weird. So when I am creating, I make sure I'm not listening to music. I'm just experiencing life or reading or just things like that. I just kind of reminisce. I kind of just use a lot of memory to create, a lot of feelings to create music. But when I want a certain feel, though, I love stuff that's like very lush. I love things that change up, multiple changes and within music is something I'm a big fan of. And but most of it's emotion for me, though. I just write based on how I feel, and I have to stay away from the music that inspires me. I listen to a lot of Nujabes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his stuff, but Nujabes and Fat John did a lot of the Samurai Champloo stuff.
Oh, right.
And
yeah.
So I listened to a lot of that stuff for inspiration. When I was in Japan, I bought the Bravely Default soundtrack. I really liked that. I had a good time listening to that one. But yeah, I think a lot of that stuff, the more I listen, the more I want to try to create it. So I have to stay away from it for a while before I create.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a lot of feeling for me and less direct inspiration because it's so easy to draw that line. I mean, a lot of the composers I know, they do that. They're like, well, I was thinking of Mega Man Stage 2 of Wily's Castle when I wrote this, and things like that. And there's a lot of times where sometimes you can't tell, but other times you can. And so I get so afraid of that. So I try to stay away from that stuff. I do a lot of 8-bit stuff. So naturally, when Chip, any new Chip projects come about, I'm studying them. Vert is probably like the most amazing Chip guy out there. He just did the Shovel Knight soundtrack, so I've been listening to that a lot. And yeah, but my stuff, I feel like it's so different because it is hip hop, and hip hop tends to be a little slower. And I can listen to that stuff and not get too inspired to copy because I feel like my stuff is so different, so it's weird, I can't really fully answer the question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I did, but
lyrically, is there any particular sources of inspiration you have for when you're writing your lyrics?
Well, inspiration for writing lyrics?
Or do you just
really? I listen to a lot of, guys that I love that were great with lyrics, Bob Dylan, to Tupac, so there could be anyone. But, honestly, I feel like reading gives me a lot more inspiration for lyrics, just in general, just reading a narrative or some quotes and things will just inspire an entire song. And that's usually how. Yeah.
Well, I can definitely relate with the whole being worried about unintentionally ripping someone else off thing.
Yeah.
Because going back to writing, like, that would totally happen. Like, I would start a new novel, and I'd be so excited about it, and then I'd look back at the novel I'm trying to write and realize that I'm subtly shifting all of these plot elements and the whole feeling of the book to try to capture someone else's feeling that I enjoyed so much.
Yep.
It can definitely, I mean, to the point where I started to get paralyzed. I would just throw out all of my characters because I'm like, this is ripping off Count Dooku from Star Wars. This is ripping off everyone else from Star Wars. And it got to be like a real problem. It's kind of hard to find that balance between. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh yeah. I was just going to say that's one reason covers are nice when it comes to music, or like remixes, because you're given license to pull from a song, but then you can experiment creatively from there. So kind of, if you're literally taking the melody, you're making it out in the open. Listen, this is a remix of a Mega Man song. So now I don't have to worry that I'm taking elements from that song.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're sort of in a creative slump and you just can't find a starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's all right. You can copy this time. Like, just know you're doing it, and you'll survive.
I had to say book remixes would be interesting, but that's fan fiction, I suppose.
Or just the second draft. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the same guy doing it. Zachary.
Yeah, this was also kind of a weird thing. I mean, I guess a bit of a weird question for me, because, like, I guess it's hard to, like, really think of times whenever music has inspired me to, like, be creative or whatever, but, I mean, I do know, like, one specific moment, I guess, or other... not a moment, but in terms of just like some music that like always gets me in a mood to like write something or just make something has always been Dave Wise, and like
Yep,
and just with his DK600, especially with like in DKC2, the track for Haunted Hall, which is just used once in the game, but like that's like the haunted like minecart level where like you're right. That song, like probably more than like any other like game song, has just like it has like I guess like influenced my creativity in terms of where I typically I guess try to go for more like the darker, spookier side of things in fiction and stuff, and that song has always just like really, like I guess nailed the kind of like, I guess like not like real like like it's terror, but it still has like a bit of like a whimsical feel to it, and I guess that's kind of how like I always try to like do my fiction, is always try to like I love writing these like dark, spooky stories, but there's always a bit of whimsy to it, and that song has definitely always been kind of like the main thing that I always look for.
That's really interesting, because I think Dave Wise was really, really good at making goofy things serious and serious things goofy, and it never felt like... I love Grant Kirkhope's music a ton.
Grant Kirkhope is a master at making goofy things goofy.
Exactly. Like, the Banjo-Kazooie soundtrack was just all goofy. The Haunted was all whimsy. It just had, like, anything that was scary was purely, like, a trope. Which, it was an amazing song. Mad Monster Mansion is a masterwork as far as I'm concerned. But it's a totally different game he's playing.
Yep, I agree with you completely there. I'm trying to think of other, like, just general types of music that inspire me. Are there any for you, Steven?
Creatively, I mean, I've already kind of talked about it, but Morrowind, like anything that sounds like a wandering orchestra that's making it feels like you're walking through some forest exploring.
Yeah.
Because as we've talked about recently, on our episode about emotion, with Mike Resnick, my favorite emotion to encounter in video games is that of wonder or discovery. And I feel like oftentimes with music it's the same way if I need to create something. Now here's an interesting question for you, Brian.
Yes.
The next question is about music that inspires you personally or emotionally.
Spoiler.
Question
number 4. What kind of game music inspires you personally or emotionally? Okay, continue.
So how do you... Because creativity is personal and emotional to me, so how am I supposed to separate this?
Well, I mean, there's one thing that you like go to say, now I want to make art, but it's another thing just like when it applies to your life outside of creating art. I think those are for a lot of people, fairly distinct things. Like, Nights, that doesn't inspire me creatively all the time, but just in that term of that joy it captures, is absolutely something that inspires me personally. I think Elder Scrolls is another great example of how you mentioned on your walk, giving you that kind of sense of exploration. That's something that's a very big personal, inspirer, I guess that's a word, inspirer for me. Mm-hmm. Trying to think of other things that really do it. I think like, different Zelda, soundtracks have done the same thing. It does similar to what, the Elder Scrolls does in that idea of just kind of giving you a sense of, it's similar to what the games themselves accomplish in that it gives you a sense of another world that's just beyond your day-to-day, and getting caught up in what you're doing every day, and instead of getting caught up in something that seems grander and more adventurous and more full of possibilities than you tend to find yourself thinking.
Okay, this is actually the one question that I actually had, as soon as I read it, I actually had something, and then I realized that it would actually be pandering a lot to our guest. So back as a senior in college, that was actually when Black Materia came out, and that album, just thank you so much, Mega Ran, for that album. It was amazing. But on that day 5 years ago was the best track for me on that whole album.
Yo, you ever wish you never were born, thinking you can't weather the storm? That's exactly where I reside, and I don't want to commit homicide. Everything I thought was the truth was all just a lie. I'm proud of my pride, and if I don't achieve what nobody believes I can achieve, then we all gonna die. Either outcome is horrible, of course, but if we both go, it's more for the course. I think about the slums I'm from, folks are out there fighting over crumbs, and I can't do a thing to assist it. The distance is broke, I can't fix it. I struggle to find the truth, and the more I know, I get more confused. Travel the world and back, and still I know nobody that can ever walk in my shoes. Search for who I think is the enemy. Every day he reminds me more of me. So to anyone I ever did wrong, I wish you well, pray you live long. As for me, my choice was made way back in the day. That's what I say.
And so basically, when I go back and listen to the original song, I can hear your lyrics there too, and it back during that time in college, I was going through a really bad time, and that song just really helped me out a lot. So both versions now just they're very much it's very much a lift me up kind of song.
Oh wow. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. That was one, there's probably two on that album, and that's one of them that I feel are probably a little more personal than the rest. I mean, it got a little deeper than just recreating the story elements of Final Fantasy VII. Right. But it was just one about, just the whole narrative of just forgetting your past, or wishing you could forget your past, or thinking that your past was something that that it actually wasn't. And just that whole entire narrative just inspired me to kind of take that into a whole different place. And that's definitely one of the more emotional songs on the project. So thank you so much for even noting that. That's awesome. Pandering is totally allowed.
Yeah, absolutely. One soundtrack that I haven't heard yet, I don't know if it's just emotional or if it would also be inspirational. I'm curious, is To the Moon. The story seemed like it was very inspirational and it just
right, yeah. The music is so, interwoven with that game that it's hard to detach the music from the game.
Yeah.
Yes. To it as as like a separate thing. But I will say though that the end song in that game still makes me cry. So I guess there's that.
It inspires you to shed tears.
Yeah. I don't know how much that music for me is inspirational. It's very emotional. But I think that's a different thing. In fact, you need to play that game because we need to talk about it.
I know.
But I was not satisfied with the ending.
Really?
I felt like I wouldn't have made that choice. And so for me, it wasn't like, I'm inspired. I'm more like, why did you do that?
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So it's going a bit long here, so I'm going to jump ahead past question 5. I'm just going to go through 6 here real quick. What's your primary motivation when creating art of your own?
Can you define the question?
What's your primary motivation? It's the idea of when you're making something, why are you making it?
Oh, man. You're going to jump me. I haven't read this yet.
You haven't read the outline?
I glanced. I was in a rush today.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, my primary motivation for creating something, for me, it's
you don't
often...
have to be the first to answer if you're...
But I just thought of it.
Okay.
It's often that I have loved exploring other worlds and the minds of other people so much that I want to create something that I want to create something that can kind of be one of those things, if you know what I mean. Like, if I read something like The Lord of the Rings, or I see some incredible movie or playing an incredible game, then I am so amazed that I was able to meet those characters and journey to those places, especially with fiction for me, that I want to have one that I can go back to any time and mess with however I want and sort of have that experience even more personally.
Sure. What about you, Raheem?
Wow. This is a good one. It's going to sound pretty corny, but I'm just thinking about something or creating something that will live longer than I will.
A legacy.
And that's always what I'm thinking about, a legacy. Just creating something that will stand on its own and will stand the test of time. And everything, I guess, not everything. Everything's not created for that reason. But overall, when I am creating something, I'm creating it and with the thought of, will this live on beyond the length of time that I'm pushing it out to people? So I wanted to have legs. So that's really what I'm thinking about.
Of just the longevity, or specifically the type of effect it would have on people going forward?
Just the type of effect, usually. I always think of, and emotion fuels pretty much everything I create. And whether it's an emotion of triumph or sadness or just, but there's always an emotion in there. And I want someone to say, well, this is the song that I'm going to play when I'm feeling on top of the world. This is the song that I'm going to play when I'm sad or when I'm getting married or something like that. So
hopefully not at the same time.
Maybe not at the same time, but yeah, I want to. I've had a couple people, contact me and tell me that. Well, more than a couple, but quite a few who tell me, I play your songs when I'm going through something, or to help me get out of that. And that's really what I've begun to associate with. It's just positivity, and so, yeah, it makes me feel good when people can tell me that, I was in a bad mood and then I played that song you did, and those feelings, when the nostalgia came back and it just reminded me of a better time. And two, that it just brought me to a whole new place, and so that's what I'm thinking of. I'm just thinking of creating, and it's very cathartic, and a lot of times it's almost depressing what creates the moment, but what the end result is usually something super positive and hopeful for the future. So that's definitely my motivation.
Oh, I like that answer.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That was way better than mine.
Mr. Walton, Mr. Zachary.
Yeah, so it's actually going to be kind of embarrassing, I guess, though, to admit, but, I was actually, super shallow back when I, first started to, get into creating things, to, I guess, where my first thought was to where, it was more of a like, wow, I'm going to get like, you know, so popular and so rich from this. And
and
then it ends up me getting like and then usually my projects end up with me getting like neither of those. And I mean, like, it was actually like, you know, like, I mean, like, it was like really stressful there, and it was just me questioning why I was even like, I mean, like, you know, like, I mean, like, why I was even like trying to make these things if I wasn't, you know, like going to get something out of it until, you know, I mean, like, until I began to actually, like, you know, look at why people make things, and I guess it turned more into, like, I now create more for myself, really, in terms of, like, just things that I want to see and do. And, like, I found that, like, now I'm having more fun, actually, just in the creative process now that I am going with the idea that I'm making stuff for me and nobody else.
Yes.
You're making things
That's actually
for the thing itself rather than for what the reward will be for making it. That makes sense.
I think that's really important because both Brian and I have been just creating weird stuff, all like stories and Raheem, it's funny you mentioned that that tape cassette because we did the same thing. We had a tape cassette and we didn't even think to like put it into a VCR or anything. We just do audio Let's Plays.
Oh, yeah.
And
so many of those.
No one would ever listen to it or ever want to. But I guess we just got really used to the idea of creation for the sake of creation.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's helped us and in a way hindered us because it's awesome that we just enjoy creating all of these different projects and podcasts and stories and music and whatnot just because we like to. But on the other hand, we forget to put any effort whatsoever into telling people about it. And so then no one ever listens to it or sees it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to see that, Zach.
I mean, for me, I think my motivation for creativity depends on the thing I'm creating. Or like the type of medium I'm using for writing. My reason is often very similar to yours, Stephen. I like to be something and someone else for a time. I very much like getting a broader perspective than just what my own limited one is, and writing as other characters is one of the best ways I found to do that. So that's,
you really get to explore a completely different mindset that in ways is just as valid as yours, and you kind of have to trick yourself into...
Yeah. So I find that super enjoyable. For music, it's interesting because right now I primarily write music to test myself, and it's kind of a self-expression to an extent, but also just something that I'm working to get better at, because I don't necessarily think the music I make is good enough that other people are going to enjoy it that much with so much other music out there. I'm still learning, at least in my opinion, how to really make music. So it's still a very personal thing for me, because I'm not really to the point where I think publishing it would have that much value for other people. It's something if I wrote music one day that was inspirational to other people and was interesting to other people, that would be great. But right now it's kind of just a personal thing for me, because I think I'm still learning to get to that point. So that's kind of where I am creatively. For podcasts and stuff, I mean, all sorts of different reasons. For Disembodied Voices, I basically just love to talk to Stephen and Zach and Cameron about video games. So.
Did you almost forget Cameron's name?
No. I remember it. It's Cameron, right?
Yes.
And then, for this one, it's very much a desire to... I feel like video game music is something that people love to just sit down and talk about, but it's almost always either an artist is getting interviewed and just has to talk about like what album they're working on and answer its questions and not really have any back and forth and just, do the interview dance, or it's kind of just in a video game podcast, it'll be touched upon briefly, but not really given that much time because likely not enough of the people on the podcast are that interested in it. There are also podcasts where, people will play a song, analyze it, play a song, analyze it, and I love those as well. But I really wanted a place where people could just talk about video game music for a while in kind of a longer form. So that's what really inspired me to do this, is just give people an outlet to talk about what they love. And hear people talk about it. So I think, like I said, it does differ by project. So those are some of my answers.
That's cool. Yeah. I just wish I mean, I guess I do have the time. If I were to give it the time, I wish I would give myself the time to learn just a little bit of music creation. Because I feel like what unlimited potential that would be.
Oh, yeah. It's a wonderful world. Because even if you can make something super simple, you can just make a single instrument playing a melody. And it's a unique way of creating. It's so, like, intangible. It's not just like writing something down. I don't know. It's really hard to describe.
Yeah. Let's not try to describe music. That could take a while.
Yeah. Question 7, what is music? Oh, okay, no. Question 7, how do you go about sharing music that you love?
Well, see, I make a podcast, and then I invite Mega Ran onto the podcast.
And then we say Great Kirkhope and Vert every episode.
Mm-hmm. I have a little bit of Vert here and there.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
Okay. Raheem, how do you go about it?
Well, I mean, social media is the thing for, that's where everybody is. Everybody hangs out. So when something moves me, I immediately take to social media. I'll tweet it, Facebook it, put it on Tumblr, everything, and let people know. But if I'm really, really into it, then I'll just personally email my friends like, dude, you gotta see this. So that's usually when I'm really, really into something. That's the next level.
Yep.
If I call someone and say, or text them and say, oh my God, have you heard this? Then they know it's pretty serious. But yeah, I mean, every day, usually, at least once a day, I try to make a point to post music or something that isn't my own, that inspires me, or that that I saw or heard and it was really interesting to me in whatever way. So every day I try to make a point to do that. Today it was Weird Al Yankovic.
There you go.
His grammar song was right on point. So
I heard about that.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
That's cool. I'm sort of the same way, I guess. I feel like sometimes I'll get very excited about a discovery, usually about some obscure Sega song. But I feel like I won't have anyone to tell.
Hey. Oh, I already know
Maybe Brian will be interested, but even then, I don't know. Like, for example, about a week ago, I was listening to Radio Sega, which just shuffles through all kinds of, the entire collection of Sega music.
There's your catered radio station. That's the only one you ever need.
This is why I get into that chat room sometimes and people care what I have to say. But the Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz theme song for the Wii started playing. And it was amazing! I had to tell people, it had this guitar solo, and it was just on the tip of
there's music that inspires you.
Yeah, totally. And I got really excited and realized no one will ever care about this.
And so I really depressed.
I got onto the Train Station 8 account and I tweeted it out and no one said anything about it, but at least I got it out there. At least I'm sharing it to the masses. So when I get really excited about music, I have to tell someone about it. It's just ingrained in my psyche. I have to let someone know so they can share this magic as well.
There needs to be a hotline for this, the music obsession hotline, where if you're just enjoying music so much you call them that it's like they pretend to know what you're talking about.
Which is why I've been secretly, throughout all of our guests, and all the people we're meeting doing Train Station, I am keeping a top secret list of people who don't hate modern Sonic music.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to invite all of them to a modern Sonic podcast, and we're all going to understand each other and high-five and stuff.
All right, put me on the list.
You're the only one on the list.
Great. Oh, well. What about you, Zachary?
I mean, I guess it's the same as, most people. I usually just, go through the social media channels. But, I mean, anybody who follows me, on Facebook or on Twitter knows that I post a lot of music. And there are some nights to where I am just, posting song after song after song.
I do remember sometimes getting, Steam messages from you saying, listen.
Yes, and I also do occasionally do send Brian a Steam message here or there, because I know that he typically has similar taste in music, to my own, and so I will share with him something that I found that I think is cool that he might like.
Yeah, I've got some great recommendations from you, like the Infected Mushrooms. I hadn't heard of them before. I loved the EP for Knife Party, I believe it is.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed some of the stuff you shared. All right then, that is a wrap for everything but our last question here. What have you been working on, aka plug all of your projects? We're going to let our guests go first here. So, Raheem, what have you been doing?
Oh man, I've been touring like crazy, but and I'm actually planning another tour. So
nice.
I'll be at San Diego Comic-Con doing an event pretty much every night of that week. Cool. One of those events particularly is important. It's Friday, which is, gosh, I don't remember the date now. It is 25th, maybe?
Yes, that was it. The 18th, 25th?
Yes.
So the Fridays.
25th. Okay, I'll be doing a release party for my vinyl record, which is the Call 8-Bit Anniversary Edition. It's a chiptune version of my very first album, which was not a chip album at all, but everything's been remixed by a good friend of mine, Coffin Pop, and the first ever copies of this vinyl red limited record will be at Comic-Con on that day. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to be hanging out from 5 to 7, signing them and playing some songs from them and things like that. In addition to doing a panel on comics and hip-hop with a couple of my favorites out there on Thursday. After that, I just announced an August tour with some friends of mine.
Oh, wow.
K. Murdoch, Tribe One, and Doug Funny will be traveling through the southeast United States and ending in Texas from August 7th to 16th. We're ending in Dallas. We're doing Austin, then Dallas. So it'll be a lot of fun. That's called the Opposite of War Tour, which is, there's posts everywhere all about it now. So in addition to that, I'm working on a new project. It probably won't be available till like next year. I'm really pouring my heart and soul into this new album, and I just want to release it the right way. So I feel like I'm going to hold on to it a little bit, but I have released one single from it called Infinite Lives with myself and D&D Sluggers of Hot Banana fame. And that's out now. It's all over my SoundCloud, which is Mega Ran Music. And yeah, that's it for now. There's so much stuff going on, but everything will be updated at Twitter, which is at Mega Ran.
Awesome. So that's the main place people should find you, right?
Yes.
Mega Ran. Very cool. Zachary.
Yeah, I don't have much, but I do have one thing that I do want to kind of tease a little bit for your listeners. Within the next few weeks, we should have something up, which it actually doesn't have a name yet, but Stephen and I are going to be exploring the world of the kooky and crazy Japanese-like cartoons.
I'm so excited about
Japanimation.
And it is going to be kind of a show to where I like a lot of anime and watch way too much of it, and Stephen kind of hates it, so it's going to be kind of a fun thing to where I'm going to subject him to some of the best and the worst that the medium has to offer.
Let's be fair, Zachary. I appreciate anime. I just hate all the anime you like.
Yeah, so I'm going to be showing him a lot of the stuff that he will most likely hate. And
that's going to be the best. Yep. Yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm. This is a show I'm legitimately interested in watching when it is out. That's going to be fun. Should be recording pretty soon, this week, I think. So I don't know when we'll have it up, though. That's great. Steven? Wait. One last thing. Zachary, people to find you, you're Phazon Masher at Twitter, right?
Yes. You can find me on Twitter at Phazon Masher. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest, and I'm looking for a job, so, LinkedIn folks, hit me up.
That is Zachary Walton. He writes stuff and knows a lot about games. So,
possibly too much.
Possibly too much, yes. Steven.
Well, I feel like I need to make a correction, because last episode, I believe I said we had 2 new Whales or Whales projects in the works.
Okay.
I think we actually have 3 or something. So we have a bunch of new stuff. Some of it is almost ready to go. Mm-hmm. Some of it is ready to go. We just don't have time to make it go.
Yeah.
And only one of them are related to video games.
Is that the thing with Zach?
No, I don't. Or none of them are related to video games. No, none of them are related to video games. Wow, we're really branching out.
Games? Oh, geez.
Yeah, so, we should have more to say about that later. For now, it's just more Train Station at 8. Yes, more Train Station at 8. That's kind of our big project going right now. And of course, you can follow us at Train Station at 8 on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or just go to whalesorwhales.com to find all of our projects.
Sure.
Personally, you can find me at Stephen Kelly 180 on Twitter, and Brian can be found at Lord Meldor, 2 R's at the end. That's kind of it.
iTunes? You mentioned iTunes?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, Train Station at 8 on iTunes. It'd be super helpful if you subscribed and left a review even. That would be amazing.
That would be so great. We'll read the review on the show and say thank you and all those amazing things that podcasters do. Because we are so grateful. Yeah, that'll do it.
I thought you were going to say because we are so great. And I'm like, whoa, I have to take a step back, man.
Yeah,
we are so great. Attitude helps.
Speaking of being so great, thank you to our guests today. Thanks for coming, Zachary.
Yeah, no problem.
And
it's been fun.
Yes, it has been. And thank you, Raheem.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I think that's everything we need to do in the outro, so thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to be here as always.
Thank you, me. No problem. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next week, say goodbye to the monkey porter.